Good morning. My name is Lee Mallon, and this is the Humanity course for environmental educators to understand AI. And today is the 9th module where we're going to talk all about making things interactive. Now, what do I mean by making things interactive? And so I ask you, can you code? And if the answer is no, or I'm not sure, or something along the lines, don't worry about it, because going interactive is no longer a requirement to be someone who can code, because what we can do is we can take natural language interfaces, be it through typing or voice, and we can turn that into executable code that can create digital experiences. And I'm going to show you the tools and potentially also create some things. And then it's just a case of trial and error, unfortunately. It's learning. It's basically finding your feet and understanding if this code doesn't work, I can just iterate. I can have this conversation with what becomes this AI assistant for you to build something interesting and engaging. So now it's time for a demo. So I thought I'd start this with some data. And on the theme of air quality, this is the UK government website, publicly accessible information on emissions of air pollutants. And they very kindly will give you trends in sulfur dioxide, nitrates, and ammonia emissions. And they do this in a CSV format file, which looks a bit like this. Okay? And that's great and helpful, but it's not the most engaging or interesting. But what we can do is we can jump over to our favorite tool, ChatGPT, and we can have a conversation with this data. So I'm just going to drop that CSV file into the conversation thread and say, this is a CSV file of air pollutant in the UK. And it's going to basically upload the file. It's going to analyze the file, as we can see here. And if we watch what it's doing, it's actually opening it in CSV format, and it's going to pull out the headings, and then it's going to pull out some of the values. Now, what we're going to see here is it's noticed the file actually has a load of gumph at the top, which is not standard in a CSV file format. So potentially it's going to moan. There we go. There was an error generated response. So it's going to regenerate that just to see what it does again. All right, it's going to do the same thing again. Look. Here's the actual data starts after some header information. So you see it's already learned. It knows to skip the initial rows to get the data. Display the first few rows with the actual data. And now it's running again. So now it's getting the levels. It's renaming the columns because it wants to add some description to it based on what it's got in the file. And now we've got a nice little error because it can't work out with the introduction. So it's going to go again. And if you span this, well, the good thing is you can start to iteratively learn what all these different bits are. See, it's going to try and skip 13 rows this time. Now we get the answer from the results. So now it understands the CSV. And that was all itself doing that correction on its own behalf. We didn't have to prompt it. And if it did error, we could say, like, what was the error? And then maybe we could have assisted accordingly. So here's a snapshot of the data. So my first instinct is to look at ammonia and go, NAA, not a number. What's that error for? But then actually looking at the raw data, there was no reporting or logging of that value until 1980. Okay, so now we have this data. Want to do something a bit more interesting with it. So we can write a blog post, we can do all these things, but if we want to go interactive, we want to turn it into something different. So create a graph of years against PM10, for example. So now it's going to generate the code to write the graph that's going to create And there we go, it's generated the graph. I can then download that, embed it into something. I can take the script and give it to someone if I wish it to be animated, or I could do an aspect of this myself. So then I could say, create me a web page of this graph that I can interact with. So now I've asked it something a bit more complicated, and now it's going to break down the different aspects of the project. Again, let's expand what it's doing. Okay, so now we should be able to download this file. Okay, so now this is the file it generated. And this is a graph with all of these points on that I can hover over, I can interact with, I can zoom in. If I look under the hood, this is the code that it generated, and it created and pulled in this library and this tool to generate out this graph. So you start to see that it just requires a desire to experiment and to play around with. And this is very much more near the advanced side of things. Hopefully that should inspire people to start thinking, okay, not only can I grab the data that I'm collecting on rivers or sewerage or air quality or climate change, I can then inspect them, I can gain insight, I can write content, and maybe even build some interactive graphs or some web sites themselves. The next module is all about what's coming next. What is the future of AI for environmental educators? So until next time, have a lovely day.